Hello and welcome to episode 1261 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, February 23rd. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How you doing?
Not too bad. Got up early because Shard decided that 5 a.m. was the time to wake up, and I decided to stay up, but otherwise I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm super excited for Potapalooza, and I'm also a little under the weather, which is not a good sign for Potapalooza because tomorrow or starting tomorrow, we're doing 2 days of 10-hour live streams, and I'm hosting I'm hosting all of it, but I'll actually be talking on a lot of it as well. And so being sick is not good timing.
Not what you need at all right now. We do not need that. We need you to be 100% healthy. So hopefully it's just maybe a little tickle in your throat or something, and you're good to go. Rest up because we need you all weekend. And I know you won't miss it anyway. You have to be pretty much
Yeah.
on your deathbed for that one. But we talked yesterday, talked some pictures. So no real news has happened since then. Um, but I did make a mistake. What's new? But I left somebody off in
Yeah.
that top. Got all freaked out about that top 30 there when I couldn't find the guy I was missing. Remember, I sent you the list. I found the two guys on my own just by sending you the list. Well, I left Jesus Luzardo off. So he's where we're going to start today. We're going to get to him. Then we got a handful of other groups that are pretty interesting. Got some old guys, some steady vets, some really interesting team duos that I like. Just kind of happened that each of these duos were drafted right by each other. I don't know if that is just coincidence or because they are on, they're on the same team. People hear one gets drafted, boom, now it's time to take one. Got some next wave guys, and then a handful of guys I didn't really have a category for, and I didn't want to force it. But let's start with Jesus Luzardo. He is in the top 30. He's in the top 100 overall as well at pick 82. Really solid pitcher. Obviously has some trade rumors going on right now. Until he's traded, we are going to deal with him as a Marlin, coming off his first full season, 179 innings, with a 28% K rate, 30% in 100 innings the year before that. Just some excellent swing and miss stuff. Mid threes ERA, 121 WHIP, pretty good season overall. Let's operate as though he's staying with the Marlins. How do you feel about Jesus Luzardo as a Marlin?
I think he's fine. Last year was kind of a really big year for him. It was the first time that he pretty much went over 100 innings. He had 100.1 the year before, and that was his kind of largest amount of innings total in the major leagues. So good to see him stay healthy, stay on the mound. I still have worries about kind of if he can stay healthy, kind of on a consistent basis. I worry about the command issues popping back up. But the last 2 years, he's done a pretty good job of keeping the ball in the ballpark. Obviously, helps being in Miami with that large ballpark. So he's not a guy that I end up with very much because I do have these kind of weird notions in the back of my head, like injury prone, command issues. But I probably should be more on board than I am.
Yeah, because again, 179 innings, pretty damn full season. Improved the walk rate as well, Luzardo did, from 9% to 7%. I really do like that. The swing and miss is impeccable. There's just so much to like here. And then there's kind of the added benefit that if he is traded, he's going to be going to a great spot, right?
Yeah.
Like
If he
it's
ends up in Baltimore, like there's really no better park. Like it's hard to find a better park than Miami, but Baltimore is
true.
one of them. So yeah,
And
I
then you get the
wouldn't mind
team
it at all.
context improvement.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think I'm gonna probably have my first shares of Jesus Luzardo that I've ever had, and I'm kind of excited about that.
Well, good. Nice to see you getting on board with Luzardo. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan. Somebody I'm open to picking. We talked about a lot of guys yesterday that we had a lot of interest in, and so he's not somebody I always land on, but Luzardo's definitely in that mix where if I don't get his teammate Yuri Perez, I'll take him. If I don't get somebody like a Pablo Lopez, Luzardo comes into the picture. And then he fits with a lot of these other guys too. I probably would have had him with that you know, group that has like maybe one concern because, as you do mention, there is some health in the past. It's kind of like Freddie Peralta for me, where it's like he did have a full year last year, but we can't just go off of last year and say this is who he is, unencumbered. Don't ask any
Yeah.
questions, and that's where it is with Luzardo. But again, a lot of positivity
I,
on Peralta too.
I think the hard part for me in Luzardo is he just goes around so many guys that I just love, right?
Yeah.
Like he's going behind Bobby Miller and Grayson Rodriguez and Yuri Perez and Zach Eflin. And then, but I feel like he should be the fallback option for me on that because I do like him more than, like Joe Musgrove, who's coming off of a health, kind of scare. I probably should like him more than Justin Steele, who, is a two pitch guy and there is some volatility in that. So I think I definitely need to start considering him like kind of my fallback option to that tier I really like.
Yeah, I agree with that with Luzardo. So, pardon me for missing him yesterday. Let's get into our next group here as we move on to the next 30. We got a group of old heads here, in that early 100s range, just after the guys that we talked about yesterday, the super sophomores, Bybee, Reagans. Then you go completely the other way with these old guys: Justin Verlander 124, Chris Sale 135, and Chris Bassett 137. Verlander's interesting right now because I think people are having a little bit of a crisis of confidence with him, as there's some rumblings that, he's not feeling great. He has said, and he's obviously, most players are positive on their outlook, saying, "No, I'm fine. There's nothing to worry about." But he said, "Hey, I'm old. I take longer to ramp up. I got some soreness. I'm not too worried about it." Joe Espada, their manager, is encouraged. He threw a bullpen on Wednesday. They don't seem to have much concern. Seems like a hiccup, but it is a shoulder situation. It's going to scare some folks. First off, first things first with Verlander, do you think the price is going to come down? 124 right now.
I would expect it to. I mean, anytime there's early spring news, it has an effect on the price, right? People either get really, really excited because something good is happening, or people overreact when something bad is happening. So I'm looking forward to the price dropping because I think that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about taking the gamble. Because where he's been going in drafts so far is kind of like, I don't know if I really want to pull the trigger on a guy like Justin Verlander over, a guy like Sonny Gray,
Mm-hmm.
or a guy like Michael King. But if he drops down, like, and I have to decide between him and Carlos Rodon or him and Walker Bueller, I'm taking Justin Verlander probably every time because I just feel much safer about what the projected innings total will be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my love for Verlander is well known. Definitely don't have to rehash that, but I have a little trepidation myself. I'm not even necessarily diving in head first here with Verlander. You just wonder, is it going to pop again? Is it going to go belly up at this age? There is concerns. He is a unicorn, but even the unicorn did get hurt. That led to the TJ that he had a while ago. So I understand those that are having some questions with him, but if that price does come down because people overreact, which I agree, there is a lot of overreaction to the early spring news. If that does happen, then I really start to look at it and say, okay, now I could get here. But I look at somebody like, going way cheaper than him that we're not even going to get to on this episode because, um, actually, why isn't he on this episode? Am I forgetting another person? Hang on. Let me find out where. Um, what group did I put? Oh no, he's coming up in the next group. Sorry. But I look at somebody like Erod, who is 70 picks cheaper,
Yeah. I mean, we're
and
gonna
I'm
have a long
like,
discussion about Erod on Saturday, I believe it is, with Nick Pollock and Eric Samolsky, and there's gonna be some arguing about some ranks. Not me arguing against you, but you and me arguing for Erod.
yes. And so, I look at somebody like that specifically, because they're both in my solid veterans tier, which there will be a rankings update today. So some things will shift, but not drastically on either Verlander or Erod. Erod, I'm pretty high on. And when you look at the ADPs of that solid vets group at the top there, where Erod is, it's Verlander, Barrios, Bassett, a guy we're going to talk about here in a moment. They all are being drafted so much higher than Erod. So I really like him. So with Verlander, It's a guy I could land on. I'm not afraid of him, but I'm not landing on him all that often right now. And it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, like you said about Lazardo, when these guys are in groups with players you like more, you just maybe don't land on them, even if you're not necessarily out on them. What about Chris Sale? Gets moved from Boston to Atlanta, pick 135. Obviously he has not been the Chris Sale that we know and love over the past couple of years due to health concerns. Only 103 innings last year, total washout in 2022 with 6 innings, basically a total washout in 2021 as well with 43, and then missed all of 2020. So essentially missed 3 years from 2020 to 2022 when you really look at it, which is tough. Like that's if he can rebound and have like say a solid 4 years here, that's going to be a tough part in his Hall of Fame candidacy. And I'm not saying that he is a Hall of Famer or anything, but like because he doesn't have a Cy Young, he's probably just going to be a Hall of Very Good type of guy. But missing ages 31 through 33, essentially with 48 combined innings, it's going to be really tough. 103 innings last year, though. ERA was a bit high thanks to some home runs, but a 113 whip, 430 ERA. Strikeouts were back. Is Sale back? Is he somebody you can jump in on? He's obviously on a great team now, too, which adds to his profile. How do you feel about Chris Sale as a Brave?
I'm very conflicted on Chris Sale because even in his quote unquote bad seasons, he's never really been bad. Like last year was his worst year, and it was a 430 ERA in 102 innings. That's not what you want, but like that's not the reason you lost your league, especially considering where you got him last year. But prior to that, like he'd pretty much just been good his entire
Yeah,
career.
it's missed time. It's never, like you said,
Yeah.
it's not really failure from the
Mhm.
part of Chris Sale. Because even those elevated ERAs, okay, yeah, we can acknowledge that, but the talent is always still there. Like those skills are still staring you in the face with Sale. So where does that put you with him then? Is he somebody you can jump back in on? Is this price point fair enough? Too high? Where you at specifically?
I think the price point is fair enough. I think it just really depends on your roster construction with your pitching staff. Like if you've taken some kind of riskier guys, if you put the Jesus Luzardos or the Tariq Skubals already on your roster, like I don't know that I want a Chris Sale, but I think he's like the perfect guy to pair up with a Framber Valdez or a Logan Webb, like those guys, George Kirby, those guys that are going to give you volume, but aren't necessarily going to give you the strikeout per inning you're looking for. Chris Sale has had a strikeout per inning in every single season, minus the 7 innings in 2022. So, like, you're going to get strikeouts. The question is, what kind of volume are you going to get?
Yep.
I know the projection systems that we have on Fangraphs all around 120 to 130. I feel like 140 is like a fair kind of gamble on Chris Sale because it's
But I
not like this.
understand why those are down there,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. But like, it's not like you need to baby him, right? And this is, he's even said like this is the first spring training he's had in years where he's actually healthy coming in. I think Chris Sale is one of those guys that I would take the gamble on. I also think he could be a pretty fast riser if he comes out throwing gas here in spring training.
Definitely agree with that. And again, the concept that we talk about a lot with guys, not everyone can move up, but there's certainly a group of guys that will get spring helium. Sale could easily be amongst them, especially being a Brave.
Yeah.
I think that if he was still a Red Sox and had a great spring, maybe he'd move up a little bit, but not as much. But on the Braves, he would have a chance. He has a chance to leap into the top 100. And then I get a little bit more cautious. So I'm pro Sale. I'm down for it, but I like it at this price point. If he does skyrocket, I get a little bit more nervous about my body comp there. So I'm excited to see what he can do, though. It should be a lot of fun to see if Sale can succeed with Atlanta and have a full season. I would love for him to get all the way back and really pitch. Again, a full season here. When I say that, I mean at least 162 innings, which is an ERA qualified season. His last one, Justin, for Sale, 2017. We are a long way from that. That's why those 120 to 140 projection ranges make a lot of sense. What about Chris Bassett? He feels kind of like a, steady, boring type of guy. You never getting oohs and ahs when you take him. You're not really sniping somebody on him, generally speaking. but he just keeps doing it. In fact, he's really just been adding volume each of the last 3 years while doing basically the same type of thing in terms of the ratios. 157 innings in 2021, 182, and then the 200 last year with Toronto and a AL high 16 wins, which was really nice. He just keeps, putting that volume together. Age 35, can he do it again? Are we putting down another, at least 180 for somebody like Chris Bassett? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can put down a 180. I do worry a little bit about kind of the elevated home run rate last year. We saw
Hmm.
him get to 126, which is the largest one he's had since 2019, and pretty much kind of since he broke out. So I'm a little concerned about that, but I think overall you're going to get a lot of volume, which kind of counteracts the fact that he's under a strikeout inning pitcher. He's on a good team. He's going to get wins. He's not a guy I tend to land on a ton because he's just kind of boring in that area around other guys who are not that boring. But there's something to be said for boring, and stability in your rotation, especially if you're playing in deeper leagues. If you're playing in 10s and 12s, probably just ignore Chris Bassett to go for a little bit more upside. But in 15s, I like kind of that stable middle of your rotation guy.
Yeah, and you just said this concept uh with Sale and Verlander, really, that if you're taking a bunch of risk early on, maybe you don't go for
Yeah.
these guys. Bassett's the kind of guy that you do go for. If you are taking the
Hmm.
Scoobles and Yamamotos and these guys that have amazing upside, but also have a really big question mark tied to them about, like, are they going to be the dude this year? Bassett is one of those guys that you feel a lot more comfortable with if you come around, you get him, you pencil in that buck 80, and you kind of go from there. So yeah, I think it is more of a deep league type of play. I wouldn't completely ignore him in the shallower formats, but I get what you're saying. You're shooting for the upside. I definitely always want to make sure that people understand that veterans have upside too, but I don't necessarily know that somebody like Bassett carries a ton of upside just
The
because. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the upside's in the innings. Like
And,
that
and, and he
is
and he did it though last year though, so it
yeah,
wouldn't even be upside. It would be a repeat. Sorry, it'd be a repeat of what he did last year. 200 innings, 360 ERA,
yeah,
118 WHIP. But yeah, I always want to just make sure people understand that veterans can have upside too. But I don't think we're gonna wake up and see Chris Bassett start striking out a guy per inning. That's just not
I
his
agree.
game. He has
Yep.
a 9% swinging strike rate, but a solid investment, especially in the older, in the deeper leagues, I should say. Steady vets. There's a big group here, so we'll take them in stride. Sonny Gray at 118 is kind of the outlier in terms of ADP, so we'll focus on him and then jump to the next group. Merrill Kelly 150, Jordan Montgomery still unsigned 151, Jose Barrios 169, then another jump down to Yu Darvish 193, Eduardo Rodriguez 197, Nathan Eovaldi at 209, and Lucas Giolito at 224. And yes, I did put him in steady vets. We'll talk about it in a moment. So we can kind of take this in three parts: Gray by himself, the next three guys, and then the final four based on those ADPs there. So Gray at 118 kind of leads the charge here. I think, coming off an amazing season, now going to St. Louis, that's another quality park to pitch in. The defense should be strong behind him. Do you like him for essentially a repeat, at least of the skills? I know it's hard to repeat a 279 ERA. He had 308 the year before, but do you like him for a great ERA again too? Say 320 or better as well. Where you at on Sonny Gray?
Yeah, I don't know if I like him that much, but I do like him for like a mid threes ERA. Like his home run rate last year was ridiculous. Like you're talking about,
That drove the
yeah,
crazy ERA. And then 308 the year before with a 10%,
yeah.
9% homer to fly ball. So that's 2 years in a row. But again, going to St. Louis,
Hmm.
maybe there's a little something there because
It's
yeah,
a
if you look
great
at
defense behind him.
and a
It's a
solid
good,
park.
yeah, very good park to pitch in. A division you're not really scared of that much.
Yeah, trips to
Uh,
Cincy are really the only part that gives you a little pause, which he's pitched there before. And, he did give up homers in 2021, but in 19 and 20 when he pitched there, Sonny Gray, he was under a homer per nine. So home run suppression has definitely been something that he's had a lot throughout his career. He's had a few bouts where it spikes up, but for the most part, he's been pretty good. I guess the concerning part, though, is those home run to fly ball rates the last 2 years. They just feel a bit unsustainable, even when you compare to
yeah.
his career average of 12%. So even if you like him at a mid threes, though, that's still a pretty good endorsement because he's been on upper threes Sierra the last 2 years. So you think he
Hmm.
can continue to kind of beat that skill projection? Um, where you at on the innings? I think that's probably the biggest
That's
question.
Yeah, that's the biggest question for me. I mean, I've made body comps to and mechanics comps to Tim Lincecum, who like fell apart much earlier than Sonny Gray had. I
Yeah.
mean, Sonny Gray hasn't fallen apart, but he has struggled to kind of stay healthy in recent seasons. I mean, last year was the first year that he's thrown over 135 innings since 2019. So uh, I'm probably gonna play it a little bit more conservative and probably only pencil him in for like a buck 35, maybe a buck 40. Um, I think that while there is some upside because there have been years where he's been over a strikeout in an inning. The last 2 years he hasn't been. So now you're lowering the innings total, and you probably got to keep the strikeouts, probably sub strikeout an inning.
Yeah.
That kind of hurts his overall value. I have drafted him, especially when I can get him as like my number 3 or number 4 starter. But I
Do
think
you
you want to.
recall, just real quickly, sorry, do you recall offhand if you paid ADP the 118 area, or had you gotten him coming in below that, if you can recall off the top of your head? Because I do
Um,
think that's an interesting price point, and it does give me a little bit of pause on Sonny Gray for, again, the same reason we keep reiterating that he's around so many other guys I like that I end up leaning away from him.
yeah, I can find it very very quickly. So because I just drafted him in the Barf League draft.
Okay, while you're
Which
looking
was
that up, I'm actually going to call bullshit on myself. He's not around guys, a group of guys I like. It's actually that I usually take a picture just before him. That well, Bradish before he got hurt. I do have Bradish shares. Bradish, Cease, Bybee, Reagan's area that they're about a round before him, and then the group after him. I'm a big Bailey Ober guy. I've been taking some gambles on Carlos Rodon. So actually, he's a bit on an island there. Sonny Gray is at 118. But I usually leave that island alone. I've been finding myself taking a hitter in that range, and so it's not that same concept we were talking about there. It's something entirely different, but it still has led me to not really taking Sonny Gray.
So I took Sonny Gray in the middle of the eighth round, which was pick 113.
Okay, so right around that ADP, which again I don't find egregious. I've just been hitter in that general area for the most
Yeah,
part.
the problem was for me was this is the team where I started off Tariq Skubal and Zach Eflin, and the pitching just went so quickly in that draft. I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted Tanner Bybee, and he went the pick before me. I was pretty upset about that. I probably should have pivoted to a hitter there and just been like, okay, I'll find a Chris Bassett later. I'll find a Jordan Montgomery later, someone like that. But I ended up going with Gray. I don't feel great about it, especially because I feel like because he has that injury risk, you have to be a little bit more careful at the top end of your rotation. And I wasn't. I mean, Skubal's got risk. Zach Eflin's got risk. Both of them have had injury issues in the past, and now I kind of compounded that with Sonny Gray. So, something that I won't repeat in future drafts.
I did take Sonny Gray in
In
labor
labor,
on
yeah.
Tuesday when I took five Cardinals in a row and 6 of 7. And it was not intentional. I took Arenado,
You were
Jordan
just drafting
Walker.
with a bunch of Cubs fans, and they all dropped.
They just let them all go. Yeah, I took Arenado, Walker, Gray, Wilson Contreras, Edman, and then I almost took Newt Bar. I was like, no, I'll wait. I almost did it for the meme, but then I took Erod, and then I took Newt Bar in the 13th. So 6 of 7 from the Cardinals. I don't mind stacking a team, a team that I actually think is going to be pretty good this year. So it was pretty funny. People started noticing and like, what is up with this guy taking 8 million Cardinals? I like all of them, and so let's see here. That's pick 9, around 9:50. So 135. So I felt like again, because in that range, I took Walker and Arenado more in the range of where Gray's ADP is. And to give you some other names going in the NFBC drafts in that range that I'm usually on, Arenado's one of them, Xander Bogaerts, Casas, Suzuki, Castellanos, Spencer Steer, Josh Young before the injury. So I'm just usually on hitters in that range, and that's why I don't have a lot of Gray. But he fell in the labor draft. I needed pitching as well. I had to go back to the well after starting with some early pitching. I took Cole in the second. I had the wheel at 15. So I went Jordan Alvarez and Garrett Cole, but then I also had Hader and Clase. I went the double closer. Then I took 4 rounds off from pitching, and then Gray was the comeback there. So I went Cole, Gray. Gray is my number 2, but then I went Erod right behind him. Christopher Sanchez also took the gamble on Beeler. I know that that's going to take some time to pay off, but that was I can wait on that in labor with the IL stint. So anyway, we can talk about my labor draft on Monday because I know that you did not like it, but
I did not, but
I will gladly defend it.
it wasn't as bad as like I made it out to be in the live streams that we were kind of in the chats
I'll be
for.
curious why you thought it was bad at all, because I quite
It's
liked
not
it.
that bad. It's just it's rough drafting next to Jenny Butler
Oh my
because I
God,
know she must have sniped you a ton
she
because
was
I love her team.
destroying me,
Her
dude.
team is unreal good.
I was messaging her like after every pick. I'm like, "Are you mad at me? Did I piss you off? Like, did I offend you? Like, what the hell?"
I wanted to message her and just like congratulate her about halfway
It
through the
was
draft, and that didn't.
extreme.
Yeah, like it was
Bobby Miller,
brutal.
Xander Bogaerts, Cole Reagans, Ian Happ, Chris Sale. Those were just the early round ones. Then in the late rounds, obviously, once you get in the late rounds, it's hard to complain about snipes because, you had ample time to take them. But there were tons more. Tim Anderson, great pick in the 19th round. Obviously, he's now signed. Matt Wallner, Chris Paddock, Tyler Wells. It was just snipe after snipe after snipe. Really liked a lot of what Jenny Butler
Yeah.
did. She put together a great team. Again, we could talk labor on Monday. But yeah, so Sonny Gray, seems like we both have some interest in him. We both put him on some teams. But again, I'm usually going hitter in his range. Let's jump down. Pick 150 now. These next 3 guys go in a similar range, about a round, in a round range here. Kelly, Montgomery, and Barrios. Merrill Kelly coming off now 2 good seasons in a row. Is he being slept on a little bit? I mean, 150 is not a bargain basement price, but it's not terribly expensive for a guy that's now coming off of 2 strong seasons, 200 and 178 innings respectively, 337 and 329 ERAs, 114 and 119 whip totals, and a big strikeout spike last year where he actually struck out 10 more, 187 versus 177, despite the 23 fewer innings from 2022 to 2023. So Merrill Kelly going to be 35, but where you at on him? I guess I could have included him and Gray in the old heads, but whatever.
I mean, I think a lot of it depends on, do you think that strikeout bump is going to stick around? I mean, it does come with a swing strike rate of 12% when he had never been above 10% before. So
There was a legitimate change.
yeah, there was a legitimate change kind of in the profile, but he's also a guy who, like, hey, he gets 45% ground balls, like with that great defense behind him, which actually just got better with the addition of Eugenio Suarez at third base. So uh, he's not a guy that I end up with very often. He was one of my more drafted guys last year, and I appreciate everything that he did for me. I
He
don't
was super cheap last year.
Yeah, he was so cheap.
No one was buying the 2022 season. He ran it right back.
Yeah.
And people still aren't super buying it. Again, 150 is a pretty fair price point.
I think part of it is the projections all have him giving all of it or much of it back. But I also think that Merrill Kelly is one of these guys that always kind of beats his underlying metrics, right? Like he just because like I don't think the projections take into account the way in which he pitches. Like he does pitch to contact a lot to get out of jams and get out of innings quickly. The problem with that approach, one, is sometimes it leads to not getting a ton of strikeouts. And 2, I think the margin for error on a guy like Merrill Kelly is pretty small. And so I could definitely see like he gets a bad BABIP kind of luck. He's had 278 and 269 BABIPs last year. Like if all of a sudden he's at like a 315 BABIP just because he gets unlucky, then things could go really, really bad really, really quickly.
If you push Kelly back to 2021, 444 ERA, 129 WHIP. Obviously, that would be not good off of pick 150. By the way, I'll point out it's a 100 pick jump from last year, so the
Yeah.
market giving him a little bit more love than I thought there. But yeah, he was picked 250 last year, so you were getting him in that range, and you got a hell of a season. But even at 444, 129 in the 15 teamers we're talking about, which is what we generally focus on, that's not killing you. Like that would not be great at
No.
150, but you're not like, losing your league over that. It would sting and you'd be like bummed. But there'd still be a lot of good starts within a 444 ERA if he took 30 turns. So
Yeah.
I think Merrill Kelly's floor, if he returns back to that, isn't too terrible. So I don't mind him. We talk about Bassett at 137. I'm gonna wait the extra round and maybe go Kelly.
Yeah,
Why
I
not?
don't have a problem with it. I mean, the problem for me and the reason why I don't end up with Merrill Kelly a bunch is because the next guy on the list is Jordan Montgomery, who
Yes.
everyone knows I love, and so
Yes.
I'm always going to end up with Jordan
Same ADP.
Montgomery. But that same ADP will not stay the same once Jordan Montgomery signs. Jordan Montgomery will definitely go up once he, I assume, is going to sign somewhere. So. Maybe I'll end up with more Merrill Kelly here in the next few weeks after the Jordan Montgomery kind of ADP busts up.
Yeah. Is he going to play this year? No, of course he is.
I I assume he's going to play this year.
Of
I
course
just
he is. I'm being funny, but I'm
like
not going to
there's
ask you
no
where's he going to go.
news.
I know
Like
there's
there's
literally no
no
news.
news. Like
Where's the price going to go though? Let's just say he goes to like a solid place. I don't even know where to put him back on one of his old teams, Texas, New York, or St. Louis. I don't think St. Louis is going to go get him. They've said that they're pretty much done. But just put him back on Texas because they could use some pitching. They got a lot of pitching that's not coming back until the summer. If he goes to Texas, back to Texas, where are you putting Jormont ADP wise?
I would assume he goes up to the Chris Bassett area, which is like 135 ish. So which I would be okay with. But like I tend to skip a lot of that tier for hitting. And so I
What
may
what
end
pick did
up
you say? I'm sorry, I was typing
about
something in that way.
135 in the Chris
Okay,
Bassett,
yeah,
Chris
so he jumps
Sale
into
kind
that
of
old
area.
heads group,
Yeah. Yeah. So uh
and you would move off of him.
not necessarily move off of him, but I just don't think I would get him quite as much.
Okay,
Just because I'm usually, attacking hitting there. I mean,
got you.
I've definitely drafted Montgomery a number of times, but part of like the allure of drafting Montgomery this season at least is been there are drafts where he just drops, where people are
Yeah,
like he's
that
not
that price
signed
point.
and he just drops. I don't I mean, any day now, maybe we'll get lucky and by the time this comes out, he's actually signed. But like we
Look,
had a discussion a week ago. We were like, "There's everybody signs over the weekend, right?" And then nobody signed.
nobody,
Nobody
and
signed.
virtually no news on them either. The only
Yeah.
one that had some news, I think, was the Snell New York stuff that ramped up a little bit more. But other than that, it was like a no news
It was all
weekend on
rumor.
these guys.
Like, yeah.
Is Listen, if I were a player, I would want Boris to be my agent, right? He is the best one. I think that's really undisputed, right? His track record speaks for itself. Are we getting to a point though where he is hurting his clients a bit? Or is it one of those things that we can't really say because we don't know the ins and outs of it? Like maybe they're all okay with it. I don't know. There's four big guys. Maybe one of them super pissed. Maybe three of them are. I don't know, and I don't want to speculate because I know people like to vilify Boris. I used to do that way back in the day until I learned more about the labor side of the game, and I support the players and a lot more. I used to be that douche fan. I was like, you just sign. I'll play baseball for free if I could. Like, yeah, but I can't because I have no talent.
Yeah.
And so, I stand with him and I appreciate what he does for players. But is he possibly hurting them a little bit here now that we're starting
Well,
things up?
I mean, absolutely. This, like, I hate to be the tinfoil hat guy. This feels like collusion. This absolutely feels like collusion.
Because
Like,
all four are his guys.
yeah, like, I mean, the fact that none of these guys have signed
And there's
at
no
this
news
point,
on any of them except a little bit of Snell rumoring.
yeah. And a lot of the news that we have gotten on Snell is like his contract demands are just outrageous,
Yeah.
which may be true and may be the reason why he hasn't signed. But all four of these guys haven't signed. Like this is this is insane. Like, I can't imagine Matt Chapman shouldn't have signed, or Jordan Montgomery shouldn't have signed by now.
It seems crazy. Yeah, Belly and Snell are a little different because yeah, they both had spike seasons. Snell's always had the injury issues, but wins his second Cy Young. Bellinger, a former MVP, bounces back, has an excellent season. A little bit more trepidation signing either of them to a long term, but Montgomery and Chapman just been churning out quality seasons
Because
and
it's
just
not like Chapman wants like an 8-year deal, right? Like, what,
I don't know, man.
3 or 4 year deal? Like,
It is wild to me.
for a platinum glove freaking third baseman, like, I just don't understand how. I mean, any of these guys are still available at this point. I mean, if I am the Giants or I am the Yankees and I'm looking at what other teams in my division have done, I'm like, just write a check. Like,
Right?
I don't want Blake Snell on the Giants, because I am afraid of those injuries, especially long term, and how he's going to hold up over a course of like a 6 or 7 year contract. But
Mm-hmm.
like, come on, like, you're still leaving a guy who's got to be considered a top 40 starting pitcher and a guy who is probably a top 15 outfielder on the market right now. I just don't get
Just
it.
chilling. Just chilling. Very interesting. We'll see if there's any movement this weekend, and maybe the upcoming Monday here, or during Potapalooza, we could have breaking news. That'd be
Be
awesome.
nice.
But we'll see.
Maybe they're just waiting for Potapalooza. They're
You
like,
know what?
listen,
That
I
would be
need a
really kind.
platform to kind of announce this. And all of a sudden, in the 7 o'clock hour, Blake Snell comes on and goes, listen, I'm taking my talents to wherever.
Potapalooza. Oh wait, no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Back to
I've decided to sign with Fangraphs.
okay, cool. We got you. We got you, Blake.
Yeah.
Jose Barrios. He jumps down now like about a round, just over a round plus from Jordan Montgomery at 151 down to 169. He bounced back. It's easy to say now, but I'm on record saying it last year. I'm not just hindsight Henry over here. He felt like the easiest bounce back candidate last year. Because I just didn't believe that he was a mid fives ERA pitcher. And in fairness, the market didn't really either. His ADP was around Merrill Kelly's 245. So it's not like he was being treated like a total piece of crap going in the, post 300. But 245 is still a pretty nice price point to pay for somebody that you felt pretty comfortable was going to give you 180-ish innings of quality work. He came all the way back down to a 365 ERA, gave you a 119 whip with it. He's back. How much do you hold the 2022 season as like a concern, or is that just the clear outlier and you are comfortable betting on Barrios as a full season guy that's going to give you an upper threes to low fours ERA with a good whip?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's who he is. I think he is a upper threes, low fours ERA guy. What I think 2022 does do is tell you, like, there is a little bit of a wider range of outcomes than maybe we had anticipated coming into
Part-
that season.
Particularly if if Barrios gets hurt by the homers again,
Yeah.
because that's what really ate him up was the meltdown on opening day was a harbinger, and homers galore for Barrios
And
that
in a
year.
BABIP that was like
Yes,
almost 30 points over his career average. So
everything went terribly.
yeah, like, I mean, we do know that there is kind of um, a uh, a wider range of outcomes. It's interesting because Brios was a top tier pitching prospect. I think the number one pitching prospect in baseball at one point. And there's always been this thought for years that, like, there's another level of Barrios. There's another level of Barrios. One of these days, he's just gonna pop, and he's gonna be a top 10 pitcher in baseball. And then 2022 comes around, and now everybody's like, nope, nope. That's not only is the ceiling never happening, but the floor
But
is
now we
is
run away from it. Yeah,
yeah,
he's
uh,
30.
yeah.
He's been
Like,
around for a long time, but he's only 30 this year, Barrios is. And I I've always liked him. I was part of that campaign of like, yes, there's another level because I always thought he could spike his strikeouts and cut the homers a bit. And then it's like, okay, Paul, it's been 4 years of the same thing in a row. Stop projecting a step forward. And so I'll just take what we get though, which is a really quality guy and bankable numbers. But another reason why I don't really take that old heads tier or even the three guys in this tier that we just talked about.
and I was just gonna say that exact same thing. Like, maybe this is going to be the reason why I don't end up with a lot of Merrill Kelly or Jordan Montgomery or Chris Bassett earlier on in drafts, because I can get, a guy like Jose Barrios, a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez, like 50, 30 to 50 picks later. And I think I'd rather just do that. So, I haven't gotten a lot of Brios this year, but I think I need to start getting a lot more Brios. Part of the issue is, like I mentioned, my favorite guy in this tier is the guy we're going to talk about here in a couple.
Yeah. And I love him too, and it's
Yeah.
Erod. But we got to talk about Darvish first. But anyways, we talk about this concept a lot. We always reference Dave Potts when we do it, taking like steady, boring guys. And I don't know if Barrios is a guy that he likes or not. We're not trying to project guys onto him. But we always mention, I think like Brian Reynolds is kind of the platonic ideal of that guy, at least in the upper rounds. But that's what Barrios is not necessarily just going for the Gavin Williams, and we're going to talk about him in the next tier, and the guys in that team duos tier that's coming up next, not just taking those guys all the time and trying to bet on the quote unquote upside, and just taking kind of the steadiness of Barrios. And again, it wasn't steady in 2022, but that is just looking like a clear outlier right now. You Darvish first before we get to our boy Erod. 193. I am growing more comfortable with you, Darvish, particularly at this price point, Justin. I understand the concerns. I just feel like they're covered in the price. Yes, he's 37, and yes, he's coming off a 4.5 ERA last year with a 130 WHIP. I grant all that. I mean, I don't have to grant all that. It's a fact, right? I can't deny it. So there's
I
nothing
can't. I'm going to deny that happened.
that was not real. No, there's nothing to grant. It's just acknowledging the fact. But his price point's now down to 193. And I feel like that's a good spot to buy somebody who still had a 17% strikeout minus walk, 25% K, 8% walk. The home runs were up. He had some blow up outings that really tainted the season. I just think I'm willing to bet on a bit of a rebound. And if I do get another bad season like this, again, it's not going to kill me. We just talked about it with Merrill Kelly, and Merrill Kelly is 43 picks more expensive. So if I'm comfortable with his downside, why wouldn't I be comfortable with Darvish's, knowing that his upside's even higher? We're a year removed from a 3.10 ERA and 0.95 WHIP in 2022 from Darvish. I've just grown a lot more comfortable with him at pick 193, and I'm curious where you stand with you, Darvish, these days.
He's not on my draft board.
Oh, so not comfortable with him.
Not comfortable at all. I just think he's getting Tommy John. He had his last Tommy John in 2015, so he's past that kind of safe window of like the Tommy John honeymoon. He ended the season with elbow issues. There was a lot of talk that Tommy John was on the table. I don't think, if I'm gonna take a guy who has like an injury red flag, I want to feel like Chris Sale, right? With Chris Sale, you're all like, oh, he could get hurt again, but if he pitches, he's gonna be great, right? He always is good. Now, Yu Darvish is usually good, but he's not always good. And
it's pretty much always good. I think you're splitting hairs there because, again, look at the 2022. If Darvish is healthy, why isn't that still on the table completely?
I mean, I guess
sub one WHIP.
I just think there's so much risk, and he's going around guys that I love. Like I get never
it. Erod's coming up.
Erod's right there. Let's see other guys in that 190 area that I really, really like. I mean, Pepio, I really like. Savali, I like. Yep. Brandon Pfaadt, I like. So Brian Bayo's going, 30 picks later. I really like Bayo. Like, I just am always going to pass up on him because I think there is, for a lot of guys in this area, like there is like innings risk, right? Whether it's because of injury or just they're young and they have not built up innings, right? Yu Darvish's innings risk is like 7 innings. Like it is, like and don't get me wrong, every pitcher has
that. Every pitcher's risk.
But Yu Darvish did not finish the year on the mound, and that petrifies me. And so he's. I mean, I don't want to say he's completely off my board,
But you're
because
just
like
really not landing on him.
if I'm there at pick 350 and Yu Darvish is
Well,
somehow
yeah,
still
yeah.
there, like I'm just gonna take the gamble. But I think top 200, no, I can't do it.
Okay. We all got different risk tolerances. He is a 233 is his max right now. 136 is his min. Now, I'm not that interested in you, Darvish. I will say that. This is 51 drafts that we're talking about over the last calendar month. Um, and the draft, again, I don't know which one I have selected here. You usually have a draft selected on NFBC, but I did take him in the one I have selected at pick 216. And so, post 200, I'll take the shot on Darvish. But I understand your trepidation. I just see it a little bit differently, and that's totally fine. Let's get to
Yeah,
Erod. Let's do it. And again, this is a big reason that you're not taking Darvish is because why wouldn't you just take Erod, who's right there? We talked already in this episode quite a bit how much we love him. Erod's been a guy that I've been a fan of pretty much his entire career. And when he came to my Tigers, I was really excited because you know, I always felt like he could be better than the guy we saw in Boston, but I think the division in the park kind of capped him where he was. Like he kind of kept putting up those same skills every year, and it's like, well, it's a really difficult division to survive in, especially when they were playing that many divisional games, and the park doesn't do him any favors either necessarily. And so he was always kind of that high threes with a high 1-2s, sometimes a low 1-3s type of whip. But pretty solid. And again, we play a lot of deep league, so always that solid deep league guy comes to Detroit, and I'm like, well, take those same skills, put them in Detroit and the AL Central. This is going to go well. It didn't quite go well in 2022. Had some off-field personal stuff that the team let him go deal with, which totally fine. Totally understand that. Not my business. The team's cool with it. I'm like, okay, get right. Hope everything's going well. Comes back last year, dealt with a little bit of injury, only pitched 153 innings, but they were really good. And they basically panned out exactly what I thought could happen in Detroit with the same skills, better park and division, yielding better results. 330 ERA and 115 whip, both career bests for Eduardo Rodriguez. Now he moves to Arizona. Better defense, still a good park, a little bit of a risky division, right? You got the Dodgers, of course. You got maybe a couple trips to Colorado. The Padres are a good team. Your Giants, they're not great, and you get to go to their park. So I actually do like that a little bit. But I'm still fully in on Erod. I still think he can be better than he was in Boston, maybe a little bit worse than he was in Detroit. Give me like a 370 ERA, a 125 whip for 170 innings. That's just how I feel about him around pick 200. I love Erod. He's boring. Not going to get too many oohs and ahs unless it's in a draft with you and I snipe him from you.
yeah.
But I really like Erod. I think he's a nice rotation stabilizer. What say you of Erod?
I think one of the only reasons why I haven't gotten more Erod this year is because you and I draft so much in early drafts together because we're doing
Yeah.
solo drafts and stuff. But yeah, I've already got Erod on 3 teams. I'm gonna get him on more. I mean, I don't want to just repeat everything you've said. I love him. I think one of the reasons the projection systems have him kind of coming all the way back, or a lot of the way, is because they project him to kind of go back to kind of his career norm in terms of BABIP, which is around 303. But he's been 270 something each of the last 2 seasons, and now he's going to a team with the best infield defense and outfield defense in Major League Baseball. So like while maybe the BABIP comes back a little bit, like I'm not like letting it come all the way back.
Me neither.
I think that Erod is really, really underrated. I know he's not like he never turned into the prospect that or the pitcher that people thought he would as a prospect, but like you can't hold that against him. Like you're talking about a guy who probably is going to be sub strikeout an inning, but you're going to get 150 really, really good innings from. And yeah, I just
And
think he's great. And the price doesn't kill you. Like if you
no,
told me I could get a guy who just threw 150 plus innings of a 330 ERA at pick 200, I'd be like, okay, sign me up. Like, why? Like, did he finish injured? No, he finished on the mound, finished pitching well. I like Erod.
maybe it's just a lot of Dodger fans out there that are still bitter that he didn't come to their team. Hey, it's not a birthright for you guys to get whoever you want in trade. He didn't want to leave in season because now people are trying to act like he's a hypocrite for now leaving Detroit to go to Arizona. It was about the in season move.
And
which I
I'll be
totally
honest, like,
respect.
I didn't get it first because I didn't know it was about the in season, and so I was one of those people like he wouldn't go to the Dodgers, but he'd go into Arizona. But it makes a lot more sense, like especially when you've had like marital issues. You don't want to move your family halfway through the year, like
Yeah,
that
because
is
that's
like
what the 2022 departure was
yeah,
about, was something family related. So
mhm.
I just, again, most of it's not even our business anyway. The fact that some of it leaked out, we have a general idea. And as that goes, okay, I respect your decision. And that's what you bargain to get rights
Get
like
that, yeah,
that.
yep,
And I respect your ability to use that.
absolutely.
He's not Anthony Rendon all of a sudden hating baseball because he didn't want to go to the Dodgers. If the Dodgers had offered him this year and it was, ready to do a deal with them, I think he'd have gone. I don't
They
think it
were
was
they were
a hate
discussing
LA.
a contract
Yeah.
with
And
the
people were like, well,
Dodgers.
he wants to go there now. Again,
Yeah,
it was about the in season. Kids' school was getting started, whatever the case may be. I respect it. And again, I hate to kind of crap on a bunch of guys that we just said some pretty positive things about, but I do have a hard time taking a ton of shares of Kelly Montgomery and Barrios because Erod's there at 197. And
yeah,
I think he
I
should
agree.
be right at their price point.
Mhm.
So it's less about negatives on them and more about positives on Erod.
Yep.
What about Nathan Eovaldi? I imagine that you're probably, I mean, he doesn't have the same situation as Darvish, so maybe you're a little bit more interested in him. But he carries that heavy injury risk too, where it's like, man, this could really be, a double-digit inning season. Now, he does have triple digits 3 years in a row, 182, 109, 144, but those last two are not full seasons. He's pretty good when he pitches. Eovaldi is. He's in Texas, which is now a solid place to pitch. Never thought we'd be saying that, right? But
Right.
the new Globe Life is a nice place to pitch. Do you take the gamble here on Eovaldi? If you miss on Erod, is Eovaldi someone you turn to, or do you go elsewhere?
I tend to go elsewhere just because the injury risk is so great, and I think one of the things we don't talk about in terms of like the overall profile of Villavolti is all of a sudden like the strikeouts have like started to kind of trend down over the course of those last 2 years. So it's no longer like, yeah, I'm only going to get 140 innings, but I'm going to get a boatload of strikeouts in those 140 innings, and then I'll backfill with a guy when he goes on the IL. You're
Hmm.
now a guy that's 2 years in a row under a strikeout an inning. Plus, you've got that injury risk, and like he's not like a sparkling ERA guy. So, like, I feel like he is a injury prone version of like a Jose Barrios, or actually probably worse than Jose Barrios.
Yeah,
I
like he's going for the efficiency of Aldi is, right? The ground
yeah,
ball rate has spiked with in concert with the strikeout drop, which overall is a perfectly fine theory for success, but doesn't do as much good in fantasy, or as much good in fantasy, I
and
should say.
maybe this is a matter of him going, listen, the quicker I get out of innings, the
I
less
can
chance
I
I
can
have
keep
to get
going. Yeah.
hurt. Or if I don't throw as hard as I know I can, it's
Yes.
less likely that I get hurt. And so maybe I'm not giving him enough credit, but I don't think he's ever going to go back to being like a 180 inning guy. And so
I think that's fair.
I
He's
think
34, you
yeah,
know.
like 130 innings. And when you're under a strikeout inning at 130 innings, and you don't have like this great ERA upside, because he's just never been a great. I mean, his best ERA was last season at 363. So like,
Yeah.
I to me like, I don't want a 4 ERA pitcher that's only going to throw off 130 innings with the downside of like 50, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to draft Evaldi.
In a little bit of fairness to him, and I get
No, I don't want to be fair to him.
no. It's fairness, but also kind of not,
Yeah, okay.
because it also underscores the point about his risk. But it's worth noting that he had a 269 ERA through June 18th, and then missed a month and a half due to injury. Came back in September and sullied that ERA and raised it almost a run to
Yeah.
363. But again, that goes to your point about the risk with the injury. I just wanted to point out that like he wasn't always sitting around this sort of high to mid to high threes number. he was looking like he was going to angle toward an excellent ERA. He gives up 12 earned in 8 1/3 to Seattle in his last two starts. That really pushed it up from 305 to 363. So, but that's always kind of the risk with him is the blowups and the injury and the blowups related to injury as well. So I totally get the trepidation with him. Evaldi's a guy that I have a huge fandom for, but I don't always translate that
Sure.
into fantasy interest. I liked him since his Dodger days as a prospect. I root for him, but I don't need him on my team to continue that fandom. Lucas Giolito, I included him in this group. He is the cheapest by far, 224. But I included him in here because I'm buying back. I think this is a Barrios situation where I'm going to take the discount coming off a shit season. And again, the market is not overreacting to it because 224 is not a terrible price point for somebody that had a 488 ERA and a 131 whip. Really, really bad for both trades, LA and Cleveland, just horrendous. But if you look at the White Sox version, 379 ERA, 122 whip for 121 innings, that's generally the guy I still think that Giolito is. Not only was he being traded cross country in the span twice in the span of a month, he's going through a divorce. I don't know how much that weighed on him. It's news that was out there, so I'm adding it in as something that could have also been affecting him. And I'm kind of throwing away those 60 innings. I don't think that's who he is. He gave up a billion homers. Homers are always an issue with him, but not 2.8 and 3.2 homer per nine rates, which is what he gave up with LA and Cleveland, respectively. I think it gets back to the guy that we've seen, that we kind of are used to. And I know that he had a 4.90 ERA
Yeah, I
and
was
a
about to say.
1.44 in 2022. I totally understand that. But I felt like he bounced back. So it looks like 2 years of the same kind of shit. And I understand that that's what it looks like with Giolito because that's what it is. Those are the numbers. I don't believe the LA and Cleveland version. So I look at the White Sox version and I see a guy that is probably going to be like a low fours ERA, but a good whip and the upside to be like a mid threes ERA. And I'm okay to take him.
I took my first share of Lucas Giolito in the Barf League draft. Probably the worst place I could have done it because, like I said, like that is already a risky pitching staff. But I just kept getting sniped. And here's the thing: I don't trust Lucas Giolito. I don't know who Lucas Giolito is anymore. He's just become so hitter friendly, especially like late in counts. And I do wonder, like, if it is more of a head thing than it is a physical thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, you mentioned a bunch of stuff that was going on off the field that may have affected him on the field. You know who I do trust? I trust Andrew Bailey. Like Andrew Bailey, who's the
Yeah,
pitching
the
coach
pitching
of
coach.
the Boston Red Sox, was the pitching coach of the San Francisco Giants when they did a bunch of reclamation projects. I think the talent is still there. And I think this price point is good enough where, like, hey, if he doesn't succeed, I can drop him. I'm not that worried about like just dumping my, pick that I got after 200
Yeah,
if things
if
aren't working.
Cleveland and
I think we're
LA,
gonna know pretty quickly whether or not
if it's
Giolito's back or
real
not.
and
Yeah.
he's like a 1.5 or higher home run guy, which by the way, he's not that far from it the last 2 years in 21 and 22. I grant that. But if he's sitting easily 1.5, 1.75 with the homer nine and it's just not working, yeah, I cut him. Pick
Yeah.
224. I don't love cutting that pick, but you're not guaranteed to keep
Yeah.
a mid 200s type of pick anyway. So I'm willing to take the gamble. I think he has some upside here that I'm willing to bet on at age
Pick,
29. And Bailey
pick
is a big reason.
So pick 225 is the end of the 15th round. In a 15 teamer, right? If you're talking about a shallower league, a 10 or a 12, right? Obviously, he's way below that cut line, but that is the cut line, for at least for me, of like after the 15th round of the draft, everybody I just drafted is cuttable fairly instantly
Yep.
because you're
And
going to drop 17 of your 30 guys at some point in the season, more than likely, anyways. So
you want to hear some names that were around that price point last year that
sure.
you definitely were cutting pretty easily? Jack Flaherty,
Yep.
223. Now, a big hit was Zach Eflin. Tyler
Yeah.
Mahle was an injury flameout, but again, a guy you
But
invest
I
in.
think the difference between like Eflin and Jack Flaherty is what Lucas Giolito could be, right? Because
Yeah,
Lucas Giolito, we were drafting him in the first and second rounds of drafts
I know.
not that long ago, right? I did it.
A-
I drafted him
After
eighth overall
2021.
in my 2022 main event. Of course, I lit that money on fire. But that being said, like the upside is still there for him. Maybe not to be a top five starting pitcher. But like, you can't tell me top 25 isn't in the cards for Lucas Giolito. Now, bottom 25 is in the cards for Lucas Giolito. He
Sure.
literally was the worst pitcher in starting baseball one year. But I
And
think
one of
I'm,
the worst last year. I mean, because here's the thing, too. He takes his turns. He took 33 turns
yeah,
last year. So among the qualified starters, I bet his 488 is pretty low. It will be fourth worst. So bottom five is in the cards
just make sure you don't start him on Patriot Day.
at all. If they happen,
Yeah.
first off, if Boston picked him up and they start him there, they're stupid. They
I,
should know better.
I hope he put in his contract that I will not
I
pitch
cannot.
before noon.
Yeah, I cannot do it.
Yeah.
He's a night owl. He's a video game nerd, and he's just not prepared for that morning start at all. Let's talk some team duos here. Again, the way the ADP worked out, these two players on each team go right near each other, and it makes sense. I can totally see why. Gavin Williams and Shane Bieber each have a 169 ADP. Brian Wu and Bryce Miller, 177 and 180. Aaron Savali and Shane Baz, 203 and 205. So it really worked out interestingly there. Um, by the way, we're on part 2 of our pitcher preview, and we're done with the Seattle rotation after this tier. That's how insane
Insane.
their
Yeah.
rotation is. But let's start with the 2 Cleveland guys. You got kind of a young
We're
and
we're
older.
almost done with the Cleveland guys too.
True.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I
exactly.
mean,
Logan Allen will be the last one. I say young and old, and I put the old in quotes. Bieber's not old, but he's a veteran, let's say. And Gavin Williams is going into his second year. So I guess we have McKenzie as well, too. So McKenzie and Allen will finish that. But we'll be done with Cleveland by part 3. But Bieber gaining some interest because of some pitch work that he did in the offseason. And I don't know how interested you are in that. He's a guy that I was bought in on last year, and I thought he could regain his strikeouts. He did not. Now, the 380 ERA and 123 whip that he had for 128 innings was fine, but it came with a 20% K rate. He shaved off even more strikeouts. So the opposite of what I was hoping would happen. Do you see a potential path, a real path to rebound here for Shane Bieber?
I mean, yeah, I do. Like, especially with the reports, his velocity is not only back, but like about the best of his career. Going to drive line this offseason. I have not been a Shane Bieber guy for a really, really long time. But
Mm-hmm.
even me, as and maybe I should rephrase that. I've never been a Shane Bieber guy. I've
No, you
never
really
liked him.
haven't.
I absolutely have been one of his biggest detractors. I'm not taking a victory lap on it because like
No,
that's the
because
Chris Sales situation where
yeah,
he was
last year
just
was the
great
first year
forever.
you were correct.
Yeah, and like and now it's like I can't like and like even last year like he still like he didn't have an ERA over a 4. Like it
No,
wasn't like it
it was
really
the
wasn't
volume.
that
The
bad.
volume
Yeah.
stung you, 128. That's it. But other than that, Bieber, again, yeah, pretty good when he pitches outside of his rookie year when people didn't really know about him. Since then, he's been a really good pitcher. Can the K's get back, Justin? Do you believe in this little velo spike here? Are we thinking that he can really rebound? He's only 29, by the way, as well.
Yeah. I don't know that it gets all the way back to kind of the levels that we saw years ago. Like I still don't think he's ever going to be like a 30% K guy, but like why can't it get back to 25%?
Mm-hmm.
I think the question is like he dealt with injuries last year and is he actually going to be able to sustain health is my biggest issue. But I think at this price point, it is such a worthy gamble. I haven't done it just because there is that part of my brain that goes, Shane Bieber bad, don't draft Shane Bieber. But like, I bet you once I'm done with my pitching projections that he is much higher on my ranks than I would expect him to be and higher than ADP. So I assume I will end up with Shane Bieber at some point because again, he's past this cut line of like, hey, if he gets hurt, yeah, it sucks. But I can drop him pretty easily. I don't have to worry about holding on.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there with regards to Shane Bieber. I've been there before. Like I said, I've been a fan. I'm remaining a fan. I think this price point is totally fair to take the gamble. I like that we're getting some news that the velos are going up. Going to be eager to see how he looks in spring. Could be a spring riser. I'd be surprised if he like was crazy spring riser because of his health concerns and the trepidation that a lot of people have. But he could rise up into say the 140s, 130s. But if he's pitching well in spring, I would pay that for Bieber. What about Gavin Williams coming into his second year here? Nice standout, 82 innings, 24% K rate, walk rate a little high at 11%, but you know that's a rookie for you. 3.29 ERA, 126 WHIP. Are we buying in on more for him? You know, Cleveland's a team that people get really interested with their starters for good reason. They've been developing them left and right. They had a huge wave last year with the with the core group coming in, and now we need to know if you know Bybee going to try to do his second year thing. We talked about him yesterday. Gavin Williams, Logan Allen, those are the second year guys. Can Bieber and McKenzie get back? And if they can, that's why you can make a case for every team to win the division except for the White Sox, because
Yeah.
that pitching staff could be amazing for the Guardians, and it wouldn't even matter that they don't have any outfielders. What do you think of Gavin Williams year two?
I want to correct something I just said on Shane Bieber. He's not below the cut line. So, but he's still going way cheaper than I would have expected him to.
Mm-hmm.
Williams, I love this stuff. Like the stuff is so good. The question is, can he control it? Because the walk rate was really high. It's been, as high in the minors as well last year. And I do worry that he is going to struggle with that control. I think there's a ton of strikeout upside in that arm. We've seen all throughout the minor leagues. We saw kind of brief stretches in which like he was striking guys out left and right last year. So I think this is like one of like the really interesting high upside, low downside plays, right? I think he's one of those guys
There's a big gamble there with the control.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw it last year. I think we saw the upside, right? Like we saw a guy who had a 3.29 ERA.
Really
and
nice.
if you go like, hey, I think there is a chance where like he could pull off like a 30% strikeout rate, which he did pretty much all throughout the minor leagues. Like that's pretty tantalizing to me. And maybe you're gonna yell at me. You may yell at me.
Oh God.
Why draft Dylan Cease when you can get Gavin Williams so much later?
Stop it. I
They're
am going to. That's
same
insane.
guy.
They're not the same. One of them has 82 career innings, Justin.
I know.
It's not a big enough price discrepancy to say that. I get your general point, but I can't get all the way there when you're talking about a guy who is 200 in the bank.
I mean, I'm obviously being hyperbolic.
I would take both.
I don't know that I would. Well,
why not? Like,
depends on what the rest of my.
Well, of course, you got to shape your rotation properly. You can't have a bunch of whip risks with them. They need to be your whip risks, right? You take a bunch of other stable guys. You got your Logan Webbs of the world. You got your Jordan Montgomerys, your Erods. But then you take both of these guys for the big K upside. Sure, he could get there, but I don't think it's quite the Kirkland brand Dylan Cease here just yet.
I think that like it is obviously it's not a fair comparison because of the only 80 innings in the major leagues, but like if we're projecting out, if we go, hey, who does this pitcher remind you a little bit of? I think the overall line of a Dylan Cease, which tells you, hey, like could Gavin Williams be a top 20 starting pitcher this year? Yes. Could it be a bottom 20 starting pitcher this year? Yes. Are you willing to take that gamble at pick 169?
I haven't been yet. It's more another one of these things where it's like, I just like other guys. It's not so much an anti-Williams take, but I just haven't really landed on him. Let me see where I have him ranked. He's my 61st pitcher. And well, so that's actually way below what we're dealing with here because I think he is pitcher 50 something. Let me see here. Pitcher 45 in ADP. So I'm pretty low on the market.
That feels pretty to me, I don't love that kind of volatility. Now, again, league context, right? So a 10-team roto league, a 12-team roto league, I'll take the gamble on Gavin Williams because like you're going to be churning the back end of that pitching rotation anyways, right? In a 15-teamer or in a head-to-head league, I'm probably not taking that gamble.
I
Uh,
think the best way to say it would be this tier versus the last tier. This tier is more of
yeah.
your shallow league tier to take those gambles because the
Hmm.
ADPs are pretty similar. And then those steady vets are probably the guys you want, again, for their steadiness, their boringness in the deeper formats where you're trying to get as much stability as possible. And that's how I
And
break it down. I think all six of these guys are like your 10, 12 team types that you think could really pop.
and there's a guy in this tier that I absolutely love, and so I'm probably not going to draft uh, a ton of Gavin Williams because I'm gonna get the other guy who's going a little bit later.
All right, well, let's talk the Seattle Mariners, guys. By the way, I did do the Savali Baz. I could have put Pepia with one of them, but their ADPs were so close, and Pepia's a little bit higher. He's in the
Well,
next tier,
and
by the
I
way.
mean, Boz has got to be on your do not draft list, considering he's not going to be
T-
back until August or something.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like there was a report he's not going to be back till like mid to late summer.
Really? I
Yeah,
missed that to have start delayed to his season. It doesn't say that long. It just says expects to
I
start in spring training, extended spring, and start a rehab assignment.
I
If
could have
it's
sworn
that
I
long,
will look it up.
If it's that long, then yeah, maybe we should just move Pepio into this tier. But let's talk the two Seattle Mariners first here. Again, finishing off their rotation here before we are through pick 200, which is amazing. Brian Wu and Bryce Miller. It's so easy to kind of compare the two, the way we did with Gilbert and Kirby last year, kind of pair them, especially because their names both start similarly with the Bri. Between the two, just straight up right away, who do you like better, Wu or Miller? And that's who we'll start to talk about first.
It's Miller. It's I
All
mean, and
right.
this is the guy I was just referencing that I just like a lot more than every other guy in this tier.
Okay, so let's talk Bryce Miller. Came in last year, really showed out, showed some nasty stuff. I was really impressed by Bryce Miller. Put up 131 innings of a 4.32 ERA and 114 WHIP. This is one of those types that I talk about where don't get totally caught up by the ERA and ignore the fact that it was a really strong WHIP, especially for 131 innings. I think there's ERA upside here. Frankly, I think there's strikeout upside too. It was
Yeah.
only a 22% strikeout rate, but 5% walk. And he's got some swing and miss stuff in his arsenal that I think he could really push that up to like a strikeout per inning. So I'm with
And
you. I like,
and he's adding a splitter
which
this year.
love that. So talk about Miller. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think his stuff is too good to be down here. And I know that like he got overshadowed by Brian Wu because Brian Wu came up and was so good. But Bryce Miller's one of those guys when you watch him pitch, you go, I think this guy has ace potential. And I don't see that in a Brian Wu. I think Brian Wu is a very good pitcher. And if healthy, I think he will be able to kind of just do a lot of what he did last year. But I think Bryce Miller is one of these guys where I go, if things go right, if he's able to add that splitter and actually use it, right? We see guys add pitches all the time and they never use them. You
Yes.
know, we get tricked every year. But if Miller's able to kind of add that splitter and actually use it 10% of the time, or maybe even more, I think all of a sudden you've got a very well rounded pitcher who's shown really, really good control. The command, can be spotty here and there, but with an extra pitch, I think that that'll help kind of keep hitters off balance. Man, Bryce Miller is a dude. I haven't gotten enough of him already, but I will be getting a lot more of him.
Yeah, I like so much of what he can do as is. And then if that splitter can be a weapon for Bryce Miller, then I agree there could be another level here, especially with the strikeouts, because, an 11% swinging strike rate is not, outsized or anything too crazy. But that alone, the shorthand is to double it, right? So 22%, which is exactly what his K rate was. But it can be as high as like a 125 of your strikeout. Like you can do that as say like, okay, 11 times 1.25, or excuse me, times 2.25, I should say, 25% on top of that. And then you can start looking at something a little bit more like that 25%, 26% K rate. And then if the splitter adds more swing and miss to Bryce Miller's profile, then all of a sudden you are talking somebody that can really push into that upper 20s strikeout rate. I just think there's real upside here. And I love that he threw 131 innings last year. So, in fact, plus another 20 in the minors.
Mhm.
So he really shouldn't be babied if he's healthy and going. He threw 150 total innings. That sets him up for a full season. I really like Bryce Miller. I think this is a fair price point to take the gamble. I'll take him in any format. The shallow formats, the deeper formats, I'm in on Bryce Miller.
Yeah.
Brian Wu, I see them pretty similarly, but a little bit different, if that makes sense. It doesn't. It actually sounds completely contradictory, but I understand why they're paired together, right? Again, came up, same team, names start similarly. He had the strikeout upside last year at 25%, but his walk rate was near double. And that's where the
Yeah.
split comes. I like that he showed more swing and miss and that he was, the better strikeout guy. And I think that's going to continue to be part of his game. But his command and control were both spotty at times. So he wound up with a similar ERA, 4.21, but only a 1.21 whip. So that's where they diverges a little bit with the extra walk rate. That said, I don't think he's a bad price at 177. I'm just always going to take Miller instead. But if somebody jumps Miller, I'm not against Woo. Now, Pepio, he's in the next tier, but he and Savali and Boz until you mentioned that news that he's being delayed. But all three of the Rays are generally why I probably lean away from somebody like Woo if I don't get Miller. But I think he's still pretty good. Can't he not be somebody who has upper 20 strikeouts for 140 innings with decent ratios, upper threes with a low to mid 1.2s whip?
I'm a little worried about his innings, to be quite honest. He only
Okay.
threw about 130 last year, and he dealt with elbow issues kind of in the middle of the season. Now, I finished the year on the mound, finished the year fine. He just
Hmm.
kind of gives me a little bit of a worry. And when he's going around other guys that I really like, including his teammate Bryce Miller, who we just talked about, I'm probably just not going to draft Brian Wu very much, which I think is fine, right? It's
Yeah.
That's totally okay. I don't see a ton in the profile that I'm super, super scared about. Maybe a little bit of command and control problems, but that park is pretty nice to pitch in. So I don't know. I just
They're like
something
rookie
feel
bumps, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I guess if you want to pick one thing, it's not a deep arsenal. It's super fastball
yeah.
heavy, 73%, which is rare these days, right? We see a lot of guys going away from fastballs, but he's got a good one. And then the cutter and slider, they are different. They're distinct, but the slider's only a 9% pitch. It's a 4% show me changeup. I'd like
Neither
to
of
see
them are
that.
very good pitches either. Like,
Exactly. I'd like to see that the secondary arsenal really take a step forward before I really feel comfortable in somebody like Brian Wu.
yeah, I'd almost love him to add a different pitch that might be more effective, or maybe change the grip on something to try to get a little bit more movement, maybe in that slider. Um,
Especially because the platoon, because of the way that cutter and slider aren't that different in terms of pitches. Like I said, his are
mhm.
distinct, 4 mile an hour split, so they are two distinct pitches, but they both work better against righties. He had just a 7% strikeout minus walk against lefties versus 26 against righties.
Yeah,
That puts a lot of risk on Wu. Maybe he needs to get in the lab and get the splitter
yeah.
to
I
get
think
an
that would
opposite
be
handed pitch.
Yeah, I think that would be actually really beneficial for him. So, like I said, I understand why other people are really excited about him. This reminds me a little bit of I hate to say it, like early career release Castillo, where everybody got really, really excited, but he wasn't quite finished yet. Now he could have like the rest of
Wait, are we talking about Cole Reagans?
could be.
Sorry, we were just talking about that this morning.
So like
That might be a discussion on Potapalooza, but no, I see what you're saying. Like
I hate to say like that, and like
his
and
price
you
point's much cheaper though.
yeah,
We were taking Castillo top 100.
yeah, exactly. But like I hate to say that on a guy that then went like complete ham and like
Yeah,
that turned into a
but it
huge
took some
cut.
time.
But it took some time, and people like I remember having when like back in the day when Eno was on the pod and I was just behind the glass. I remember like yelling at you guys, like you guys are overrating Luis Castillo because of how good that fastball can be. Um uh and I think I was right. Now at this price point, it's not a bad gamble to take. Like we're talking about a
For
guy who's
Wu.
for Woo. Like we're talking about a guy who's going pick 177. I just to me like there are other guys in this tier that kind of do the same thing, but also have secondary pitches as well, and didn't have elbow issues in the middle of the season last year. So
Yeah,
I think I would rather have Gavin Williams. I think I would rather have Bryce Miller.
that platoon really pushes me away on
Yeah.
Wu. I'm just gonna take Miller. I'm gonna take either Guardian, Bieber, or Williams, and I'm gonna take at least one of these Rays. I'll keep monitoring Boz, but I'm
Uh,
gonna
le-
take.
uh Update
Go
on
ahead.
Boz. I was wrong. It was not. I
Okay.
don't know what I saw. So he's going to go to extend spring training as a way of kind of managing his workload early, so that way he's available for the second half of the season.
So that makes sense. So you might only get 5 months out of him. I think at pick 205, that's not terrible if he can be what we want him to
I
be, but
think
he is
I
still
think
coming
it
off a TJ.
Yeah, and I think it really depends on your format, right? So like in your
Yeah.
format where you don't have because when he goes to extended spring training, a lot of times they don't put him on the IL,
Yeah,
right?
that'll
Like
just
what
be an active
that
player.
so like for those of you who don't play in NFBC, like you're always like, oh, like like I don't care about your guys' NFBC leagues or the NFBC format because I play
Fair.
in leagues with IL, which is totally fair. However, this is going to be a very NFBC kind of centric idea because he's going to take up one of your roster spots because they probably won't put him on IL. He'll be considered a minor spot. And if he's not up till June, let's say,
Can't do it.
um, I don't know how you hold a guy, especially if you don't have very deep benches. Like if you've got a 5-person bench, like how do you hold one of those spots for Shane Boz?
I can't.
Yeah, I can't either.
I,
So
j- I just
now
I won't be having him.
in leagues where you have a lot of roster depth, a lot of bench depth, like you got 10, bench spots, like totally fine with it, right? Drafting holds totally fine with it. But other leagues, I think I'm probably just going to miss out on Shane Boz and enjoy watching him come back and pitch later in the year.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. What about Savali then? Let's focus more on him at pick 203. Goes to the Rays in that nice challenge trade there. Two solid pieces. Prospect Kyle Manzardo, who's basically left-handed Curtis Mead, and they don't even have room for Curtis Mead, so that's why Manzardo was expendable. To get a quality arm, and they were hemorrhaging arms, so they needed somebody. And Savali went over there to Tampa Bay and just was amazing. Really hit the ground running with them. Was pretty good in Cleveland, by the way. I always liked him in Cleveland, but he hit another level last year. The funny thing is that his ERA actually sucked, and so it's probably glossed over a little bit how well he did. He put up a 5.36 ERA in his 10 starts with Tampa Bay, despite the fact, Justin, that he had a 29% K rate and a 6% walk. But that's what happens when you have a 1.4 homer nine and 10 hits per nine, thanks to a 373 BABIP. We call that unlucky. I do not believe that at all. Now, I'm not saying I fully believe the strikeout spike either, but I believe elements of it. Like I think he can hold some of those gains while his BABIP luck smooths back out where it should be. And maybe the home run stayed the same, by the way. I'm not even going to say that that was terribly unlucky, but the BABIP I just don't buy. 373, that's never been something he's had. It was a small sample fluke, I think, for Savali. I think there's a big season here coming. The biggest question for me is health. 122 innings last year, 124 in 2021. Those are his two highs. And we know Tampa Bay's not going to push him for like 180 or anything. But I think that this is a guy who can give me, I'll go 140. I'll just go a little bit over his previous career high. I don't want to set some new high that's like 50 innings higher than anything Savali's ever done. But I think I can get 135, 140 innings of really good work in Tampa Bay with added strikeouts versus what we've ever seen from him before. And at pick 203, I think that's a great pickup. Where do you stand on Savali as a full season Ray?
I don't know. Um, I really don't know what he is right now, and that scares the crap out of me. The price point is fine, like pick 200. You're like, like okay, I don't necessarily need that guy to pop, but I don't buy the huge strikeout games. Like, he had like an 11% swing strike rate and a 29% strikeout rate. Like those two things don't necessarily match up on a guy like Savali. Um, the home run rate has me a big concern. Obviously, the BABIP, like he got on like just really, really unlucky in that BABIP, a 370 BABIP
Yeah, that's
after the trade. Like
crazy.
that's just insane. I really don't know what to make of him. I honestly don't. And when I don't know what to make of someone, I don't usually draft him. Like I just don't know what kind of pitcher. He's one of those guys that I really want to watch in spring and see like, is he getting strikeouts? Is strikeouts and walks are kind of the two things I'm really paying attention to. In spring training, especially because for some reason we still can't watch every freaking spring training game,
I
even
know.
though like it just makes zero sense. But yeah, I really don't know what to make of Savali. Like I don't get like what they did to make him so effective outside of the unlucky BABIP and home run ratio. So I'm just gonna stay away from him because I don't know what I don't think he's got the upside where I go like, oh, if he like has a really good season, you're really gonna regret it. I don't think that's
I
the
mean, I don't
case.
know about regretting it, but I do think there's real upside here with Savali. Like I
I
said,
mean, if he has a 29% strikeout
I
rate,
don't even think it has to be that high. I think he can hold some of these
26%
games.
strikeout rate
Yeah,
with
because I always felt like he could get a higher strikeout rate in Cleveland, to be honest.
mhm.
And I don't know if it was something where, he's a big ground ball guy. So maybe he was trying to go for the efficiency route because he doesn't walk too many guys either. So maybe Savali never really got into his strikeouts with Cleveland for that reason. And yes, I grant you that the swinging strike rate is not particularly gaudy at 11% to necessarily yield a 29% K rate. But again, I don't need 29. Give me 25, 26, which I do think is very much in the cards for 135 innings with the team there. I think there's a
Yeah,
lot of upside. So I'm pretty interested. I think the price is always fair too at pick 200.
yeah, I think the price is fine. Does it concern you at all that he's never had 125 innings at the major league level?
A bit. A bit,
Yeah,
yeah. Like that's definitely part of the risk, but that comes with the 200 price point. Is I think that's kind of covered there because here's
okay,
the thing. Guys don't pitch innings, right? Like we don't get innings anymore.
yeah,
I was actually just talking about this or writing about this in my update yesterday when I was doing the Paxton update. Actually, let me get my little tidbit on that because I talked about how he didn't throw a ton of innings and you can't really expect him to. So he had a low 100s innings output last year, which actually surprised me. I didn't think Paxton threw that many innings. Only 127 pitchers threw 100 plus innings last year, down 13 from 2022. Like we just don't get that many guys throwing a ton of innings. So at pick 200, even if I only get the buck 20 that we've seen out of Savale, I'm okay with that. But I do think there is upside to get 150 here. He's going to be 29. We know, like I said, Tampa Bay is not going to run him into the ground, but I think they could get 150 from him.
yeah. I mean, I think they could. I don't know that I would project it that high, but I think that I'm probably going to project like 135 and be okay. I
Yeah,
just
that's
me, I
fine.
still I don't get what's going on. Like, and this is one of those where it's like I don't know that I'm gonna ever draft him unless he drops in a draft, which I guess he could do.
Certainly could, right? ADP is not the same as where they go all the time. Let me get his range real quick. Savali goes as late as 238, so not crazy, but a couple rounds lower than that ADP, which I think
238's
is
right next to Christopher Sanchez.
which I'm
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I'm
go I'm
I'm
gonna go with
I'm on
Sanchez,
Sanchez too.
but I'm a why not both type of guy. I'll take
Yeah.
Savali and Sanchez.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do like him. I think where are we at on time? Should we wait because this next tier has 7 pitchers?
Yeah, why don't we cut it for today and then we'll pick back up again on Monday.
Totally fine. All right, man. Well, we're gonna get out of here. Hopefully you get to feeling better. I saw you've been having to wipe your nose a little bit with tissue, so I hope that this is just a little temporary thing and you're good to go for tomorrow. Like I said, I know you're gonna show up anyway. You're Cal Ripken there. You're gonna Iron Man it up
Yep.
regardless. But I cannot wait. Give us some details on Potapalooza.
Yeah, Potapalooza 2-day live stream event. You can watch it on my YouTube, on my Twitch, which is Justin Mason FWFB, or you can watch it on Fangraphs. I've already set
Post it
up
on
the
the page.
post
Yep.
to go live about 10 minutes before Potapalooza start, 10 a.m. to 7 or 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So early in the morning for me on the West Coast, but it'll be over earlier in the day on the West Coast. So every dollar you donate, and I'll put links in the Fangraphs posts and links in the YouTube, gets you raffle tickets to win awesome prizes, including my extra Sean Bouchard jersey, uh,
I want
and
that.
as well as a bunch of like bobbleheads, subscriptions to places like the Bat and um, like Masters Ball and FTN, and also baseball cards. But most importantly, if you've ever wanted to be in TGFBI, for every $1,000 we raise, I will give away a spot in next year's TGFBI. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, donate money. Like I said, I'll have the link in the bio of the YouTube and the Fangraphs post. And I'm hoping between every dollar you donate goes to Fantasy Cares, which is a fantastic organization that uses fantasy
Mm-hmm.
sports as a way to raise money for like Toys for Tots and things like that. I think they like donate tens of thousands of dollars of toys every single year. And we've already raised over $6,000, which is like $2,000 more than we did for TGFBI last year. So we're just combining it all together, one big pot going in. So I'll give away at least 6, maybe even more spots in in TGFBI for next year. So definitely come watch, and I will break them into podcast episodes. I'll put some on this feed and some on the Friends of Fantasy Benefits feed, and then it'll be available on YouTube to watch after the fact as well.
That sounds great. I cannot wait. Justin, I'll be with you on Saturday and Sunday. But I got to get out of here. My vet just called me, so I got to take care of this for
Yeah.
Charlotte's teeth appointment. But I will talk to you during the weekend. Have a good one.
Take it easy.